Greetings and welcome to another River Radio Sports Central podcast alongside 103.5 ESPN's Matt Varney. I am Darren Kinnard, and we are to the final weekend of the winter sports season, the final weekend of boys basketball, and you always hear you want to be playing on that final day, and the Goreville Blackcats indeed are playing on that final day.
Yeah, weeks ago we talked about it and just the fact that, 1A, there's so much good talent around the area. We had a feeling that someone would be moving on to that stage, obviously, and be finding their way to get to be able to play two more. It's really tough to get to that championship game, obviously, but at the same time, we had a feeling someone would. We just weren't sure who because there were so many good teams.
And we didn't, a lot has transpired since our last podcast because we recorded before the sectional finals. Goreville-Waltonville was tremendous in the Tri-Co championship game. And then Goreville goes to the Jacksonville Super and faces essentially a home team in Route Catholic, who is located in Jacksonville. And Goreville really just took care of business in that one. Garrett Church had one of the greatest halves I've ever seen. And to see it in person, he hit 7 threes. And it was a 2-point game at half, and he hit 4 threes in the third quarter, and they extended that lead to 14. And then he came out in the fourth, and he hit 3 more in the first 2.5 minutes just to squash any hopes of a comeback. And it was really an all-time performance.
I mean, obviously an all-time half, but it sounds to me like an all-time 10 minutes. How many people can say they had that great of a 10-minute span in their life? Now, obviously, it was longer than 10, but not by much.
No, it wasn't 11 because it was. I looked at the clock and it was like 5:25, and when he hit that 7th.
And when you add in the breaks and everything, maybe we're talking about the greatest. Truly a 15 minutes of fame, which, I mean, Garrett's out there still playing and everything, so it's longer than that. But he had his 15 minutes there, and man, oh man, what a super sectional it was for him. You need efforts like that if you're gonna win a state championship, and everybody that is at state, whether they played 2 yesterday or they're playing on Saturday. They all had some sort of effort like that from an individual player along the way, but you got to stack those up, really. You can't have just 1 or 2. You're going to need to have 3, 4, 5 type of situations like that. And it might come on the defensive end and may not show up in the box score and not be fully appreciated, but you need to have stuff like that happen continuously, and that's just what Goreville has done all postseason long.
Couple things want to break off on that topic right there. In that super sectional game, Lawson Land only scored 4 points.
Yeah.
But he controlled the game. 16 rebounds. He had 6 assists and 3 blocks.
It's really good.
He stuffed the stat sheet and really controlled the game. And the interesting thing to me as Goreville has been on this run in the postseason, it has been a different dude each night.
Yes.
And, Nick King scored 28 in the win over Sparta, and they needed those because that was a phenomenal game. And then, you had Zach Green leading the way, even though it was a low-scoring game, but he had 13, and he hit some big shots early that weren't threes. We've seen him be so successful from 3, but he had the mid-range game working, and that really kind of changed the complexion a little bit. And then, of course, Garrett having the monster game in the Super, and then you come back in the semifinals, and Nick King goes for 20. And so it's been a different guy, and that speaks to just, 1, an unselfish team, and then 2, just the quality of players. It's not just, they've got a superstar and some other guys. They've got several dudes that can do it.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, you talk about how it can be anybody, any night for Goreville. That reminds me a lot of, believe it or not, the 2019-2020 team that it really was. I believe that year it was Goreville A, Goreville B. They were just swapping in and out units at times, and you hear Coach Tripp talk about it multiple times the past couple of weeks with you and with other people, and just how emotional he gets about it every time because they should have been playing. They were, 90 minutes away from playing when it got called off, and you go from there. And I remember people being like, that year they legitimately could go and do it, and they're one game away now from potentially being in that spot, being able to hoist, hopefully, the trophy they want. They're going to host a trophy one way or another.
Right.
We're hoping that they get the one that they're going there for. But, man, it's just hearing the emotion in Coach Tripp's voice especially. It gets to me because I was there about to call a Murfreesboro Super Sectional game that did not go the way Southern Illinois hoped it would that night. But I got to see – I was sitting right in front of Todd as he coached that entire game, and then got to see the emotion as they were going finally, and so it's one of those moments where it's like, finally we're here. It took about 6 extra years, but we're here, and it's like, okay, everyone's behind you now. Let's go Goreville.
And that certainly adds, some icing on the cake, really, for Goreville, is to, have had that taken away from them by circumstances out of everybody's control. Back looking at this team, they go to state having made 326 3-pointers, which as a team that puts them in the top 15 all time. And so the concern going to an arena like the Assembly Hall, which is enormous, was, will that translate? Because we've seen a lot of teams go up there and struggle. And the other thing that I think doesn't get talked about enough is, under this new format, there's no practice or no walk through, shoot around the day before. So when they come into the arena on game day, that is the first time they step floor on the Assembly Hall.
Yeah.
And not only is the depth perception different, but also there's 2 3-point lines down on the floor. And I noticed yesterday, because we're taping on Friday, I noticed yesterday Lawrenceville shooting threes from a couple steps behind the college line.
Yeah.
And so now not only is it the depth, and I thought, and Goreville end up 6 for 14 from 3. And I thought what they did yesterday that was so smart was they didn't come out shooting threes.
Yeah,
they ran the offense. They got some things going. They got Tommy King a couple buckets inside.
Get comfortable.
And they got into the game flow. Then Nick King hits a 3, and it's 9-0 immediately. And you could just feel. I didn't think that Lawrenceville recovered. I mean, they got back within 5, but that was as close as it was the entire day.
Well, and I didn't see 9-0 at first, but I did see 6-0, and it was like, oh. Okay, it obviously it was one of those times, because I think it was about 3 or 4 minutes into the game at that point. It was like, okay, well, obviously some good defense is being played by both sides, but Goreville's got the edge here, and then the 3 happens. It's like, well, now this is a 9-point, almost 10-point game, and I think it was at one point a 19-point game, right? And
fourth quarter,
so it was a great job by Goreville, and Lawrenceville gets back into it late, but by then Goreville's got a total stranglehold on that game right there. Just what an amazing start for the Black Cats. If you're gonna try to go ahead and make a state championship, you might as well start it out that way.
Right, no doubt. And Garrett was asked after in the post game about the shooting background, and he was like, dude, it's crazy because the depth perception's an issue. And he's like, and once I got locked in and focused on the rim, that was the key. And again, it was interesting to hear a guy that he hit 3. He was 3 for 6 from deep after that night in Jacksonville. And so it was interesting to hear his thoughts.
Well, it's true. The depth is wild. It's different for someone that is used to playing in high school gyms. I can speak
especially
from
1A.
Well, that's what I was getting to. Is just the 1A gyms.
Right.
That's insane to go from 1 to a college gym right there. That's tough. I mean, I saw Murfreesboro play at Memphis this year, and it was difficult to get a shot going any which way for both teams, but especially the 1A gyms with some of them having literally the curtain and stage in some spots, and it's usually really cramped. It's easy to get used to that when you're playing it all the time, and then all of a sudden you go somewhere that is about 5 times bigger, and you have to figure it out quickly. If you have a shoot-around, you might be able to get a little comfortable to it. It's still going to be strange, but having no time, you just basically roll up. Hey, you got about 30 minutes to warm up, get used to it, and go. That takes an elite type of team and an elite type of mentality of anytime, anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And one more postscript on the Super. It was held at the Jacksonville Bowl.
Yeah.
And, and I heard a lot of talk ahead of time, about it being at the historic Jacksonville Bowl. And this was my first trip there. And I talked to a couple people that had been there, and one said it's a really nice facility, but, we have 4 or 5, maybe more gyms like that here in Southern Illinois. And, the atmosphere was phenomenal. Packed house. Both teams had great crowds there. But again, the designer of the gym, the architect, is also the guy that has done the gyms around here. El Dorado, Pinckneyville, I believe Heron, NCOE, Trico. Goreville has played in some of those places, and that wasn't a shock to them. And for me, again, it was a phenomenal atmosphere. It was a neat place and all that.
Sure.
But to me, it was I've seen games in
El Dorado
with a packed house. Yeah. It's a Friday. And talking to Brett Behrens yesterday up at State, he's like there just aren't any other gyms like that here in Central Illinois. And
no,
so
there's not.
It was a unique experience.
But the funny thing about that is that, and obviously you're not going to get these teams going to Jacksonville usually, but there's a lot of Chicagoland gyms that are like that as well. That it's just like, it's very unique to Central Illinois, but you get out of Central Illinois, and a lot of people are like, yeah, we have those, but the way they talk about it, it's like, we're the only ones. No, there's a lot out there like it.
I mean, it's a revered gym. It
is.
A fantastic facility.
It is.
But again, it's like, I've seen games like that in places like that. So
it's not hard to get used to it. Like you said, once you've played a game or two at Trico or Heron or somewhere like that, and I think Goreville did end up in a game like that. I don't know where exactly. I'd have to go through there. But even if they didn't this year, through the 4 years for the seniors, they had to have been at one of those gyms at some point.
Well, and I think that it brings us to another great point is the Trico sectional.
Yeah.
I mean, not only does it prepare the teams with great competition, but the gym and the atmosphere. I think that all that, because the guy said in the postgame Monday night, it was like, I think that the Trico sectional is loud and is,
so loud.
And it was a phenomenal atmosphere. And the game, Goreville played 2 tightly contested games with Sparta and Waltonville. And, again, not to take away from anybody, but honestly, I think any of those 3 would have had a chance to do what's going on, and I think that the experience at the Trico sectional in the games and the having to execute down the stretch and the atmosphere, all those things, a big plus for Goreville.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, and you mentioned just how loud it is there at Trico. I mean, I've been there on a Tuesday night on just a regular season game, not even when Trico and Murphy were hosting the Ernie Bozarth together and you had the championship game there every other year. I'm talking about just regular season Tuesday night game. I put on the headset and I'm like, I can barely hear anything. My partner's talking with his headset, and I can barely hear what he's saying just because of just how that gym's acoustics work. It's a tough place to play, and so I would hate to be calling the game on the sideline down there because then it's really bouncing around in my ears. But they got prepared for that without a doubt. Like I said, I knew that they played at Trico at some point, and I don't know why my brain was blanking on the Trico sectional there. But yeah, they went from one gym like that right to another, and so it truly was just, this is Friday night. It's not a big deal.
And I don't know route schedule. I don't know anything like that, but you wonder, when Goreville got it rolling and that gym is just busting with noise. Well, you wonder, that's tough for anybody to do, especially if you've never experienced it.
Yeah, well, and Garrett Church told you specifically about how it felt like we had 50%. Well, I'm pretty sure it was 50% based on how the tickets go.
Yeah.
But it was still just
you
like
could hear it. Though.
You could tell at that point. And that's the great thing.
Electric.
That's the great thing about leading up to the state championship and semifinals are a little bit different because it's going to be really tough to fill up that whole bowl. So it won't feel like, oh my gosh, this whole arena's behind us. But especially in 1A, you get 50% of the tickets basically, and you get your fan base there. They start rolling. It feels like that whole arena's behind you.
And before we get to the championship talk about that, just with that in mind, the other hard part about that is that with it being 2 games in a session, the fan bases are in opposite corners.
That's right.
Well, then the ones in the other corners, they don't have a dog in the fight here.
Usually they don't.
And I mean, you may get a situation where there's some overlap of teams or things, but it's unlikely. And, the 2A game is Peoria Manual and Quincy Notre Dame. They don't give a rip about Goreville and Chicago Marshall. And so, they might show up in the second half of that first game, but by and large, that's one of the victims, I think. And the same thing happens on semifinal day. When you got the 4 1A teams going in the semis, well, you've got the fan, and I don't know I don't know what the answer is. I'm just bringing up problems.
Yeah.
But it's just you talk about trying to replicate atmosphere. It can't happen. There's just no way. It's number one. It's an enormous facility, and even if you kept everybody in that those bottom 2 areas, then you're still gonna it's still not. You can't replicate the noise and the experience of those bowl type gyms that are packed.
It's I think it's the sign of the time where the basketball junkie that it's like, I don't care when, where, or anything, I'm going to show up. They're becoming a little bit extinct when you look around. They're around, but it's not to the degree that we used to see even 10 years ago, where, you have a bunch of people showing up just because I want to see a good basketball game. I think this will be a good basketball game. And then, obviously, their mecca is the state finals, where I'm going to be there every single year.
Well, and there are those that say that 4 classes ruined that.
Yeah,
and,
to a degree.
And I think there's certainly merit to that. I think, it's too easy of a reason just to go, oh, well, it's because of that.
Yeah.
And I think it's a multi-pronged problem, and when you look at it, there is some issue there, because if you're a 3A, you don't really care about the others, and
why would you?
And if you're 1A, I'm not sure you care about 3 or 4A, and legitimately, if you don't have a team that's from close to your area, I don't think you really care about any of the other classes, and I think that is the reason. And I don't know the ticket numbers, and I don't know that they would release them. I don't know the people that buy the all session tickets anymore. But honestly, I personally would rather see. I've pitched. You play all the semifinals on Thursday, third place on Friday, and then championship on Saturday.
I agree with that.
And then you get a day to prep. I just don't know how much money they would be losing, because I don't know how many people that are going to the 1A session are coming back and going to the 2A session, and then on today going to 3A and 4A. I just don't think that number's very, very large. And if you charge $5 extra ticket, and hey, you can stay here all day if you want. I think I would suspect that the money would be would be close to similar.
I think, yeah.
And again, it gets back to, then they had to turn around and play. Lawrenceville had to play in the third place game, which they won.
Tough.
They beat Eastland, and so they come away with third. But it's a quick turnaround for 2A. You're playing that second semifinal. It starts at 4:15. And so if you're lucky, it's over with by 6. I mean, and then if you lose, you got to come back in 2.5 hours.
Yeah,
and
it's ridiculous.
And I saw some people going, well, back in the old days when it was 2 classes, you had 8 quarterfinals on Friday, and if you lost, you went home. Mm-hmm. And then
that's fine.
And then if you did make it to Saturday, you played twice. Semifinals were in the morning, and then the championship was at night. Well, the difference though is the two semifinals were at 10 and 11:30.
Right.
And then the third place game was at 6:30. And so you had some time between it. And you know, I mean, I just feel like and everybody's gonna say, well, in AAU they do. It's like, well, I get that, but you know, I mean, it just feels like there's some legitimate tweaks that need worked out here.
I think that if you're gonna give everyone a guaranteed 2 games, you need to give each game the proper weight to it, and you're not doing anyone any favors by saying, okay, come play in another 2.5 hours. Don't even bother hitting the showers. You know, like it doesn't give it the proper amount of weight, and especially in terms of scouting, you know, okay, I guess we're just going to go roll up and just try our best. Don't know anything about the opponent, you know.
Just what they saw.
Yeah, exactly.
Earlier in the day.
Which they were warming up probably in the middle of that second half, so they didn't see everything probably. So I think you need to respect the game and the teams and say, hey, you earned your right to be here. Okay, so if we're going to give you that second game, we're going to give you a proper amount of time to prepare for it. I think that's the only fair way to go about it, and the fact that they don't, I don't like it. It doesn't feel right.
One other that I saw, and the other thing is that from a TV perspective,
yeah,
on Thursday and Friday, your primetime games are third place.
Yeah,
and they don't even broadcast that on TV.
No.
And so you're missing out an opportunity to showcase your IHSA talent. One thing that I saw, one other proposal I saw was you play 1 through 3A semis on Thursday. So then you'd have the 3A in primetime.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would play the 3 third place games, 1, 2, 3A. And then in primetime, you would go with the 4A semifinals. And then on Saturday, you would have, you know, the 4A third place game, and then you have 4 title games. And so it'd work out 6, 5, and 5.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I thought that's a reasonable.
It's something.
And the other thing is again, it gets your, you know, the 3A, 4A, those are your big schools.
Yeah.
And especially, you know, in the Chicago area, the 4A and when you look
at some good viewers.
When you look at the 3A, I mean, that would be attractive. And
yeah.
Instead you're playing 3A here in the morning. And
doesn't
you know,
make sense.
1A and 2A are kind of dispersed to the side, and then on championship day, 1A is playing at 10 o'clock. I just don't like I don't like the basketball schedule.
No. It doesn't give the proper weight to everything, and it's honestly disrespectful in some ways to everyone involved, fans, coaches, players. Obviously, it's just kind of, okay, yeah, this is something we have to do, so go ahead and do it and get out of here, kind of. Yeah. And, you know, if that's how it's going to be treated, then I think there needs to be some serious reevaluation. And I hesitate to say this, but, you know, the host is part of the reason for that. If you have to take a look at the host also and say, are you treating this with the right amount of respect that this deserves? I mean, this is one of the crown jewel sports in IHSA.
Right.
It needs to be treated as such, and not just as it's here. It's honestly something that we signed up for, but it's honestly kind of a hassle. If it's treated like a hassle, then maybe it should go to someone that will not treat it that way.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, the second proposal of doing the 3 classes on Thursday and then the third place in the 4A, I mean, that balances out the games. I mean, on the first 2 days, you're having 6, 6, and 4 as currently constructed, and then this would be 6, 5, and 5, and so that, I mean, that really kind of balances it out, and again gets your prime time, you know, so to speak, with the 3A, 4A, and you know, I think again, you come back the next day in the third place game, and I know there are those, and I have arguments with my good friend Jack Bullock from A Baseline View. We argue about this frequently about the third place game. He is a get rid of it, you know, we don't need it, blah 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 blah. You know, for regular tournaments or whatever, I'm indifferent on the third place game, but I think at state, especially if you're only going to have the final 4 teams make it, I think you get to that point where you have the semifinals, and yes, there's disappointment that you're not playing for the tournament, but I always go back to if you had a chance to play one more game, especially that one more game is at, the State Farm Center.
Sure.
I think that most everybody, if you're not 3 hours removed from losing, would be like, yes, I would like to get a good night's sleep, come back the next day, and I think it would be a better experience for all.
I can see both sides. I mean, you just mentioned about how in the olden days when they would have the 8 come in instead of just the Final Four, and after the first game it was, well, if you lost, you're out. Go ahead. That's totally fine with me. But at the same time, if you're bringing in the Final Four, I can see the reasoning also to play that third place game, obviously, and it helps those kids also because that's not only is it one more time to play with your teammates, with your team, it also adds one more game to the tape, and you know that there's college coaches that are there that are checking it out. This is supposed to be the best of the best is what the coaches are thinking. So I get to see them twice instead of just the one time when it might be a bad game.
On a college floor.
On a college floor, exactly.
In that background, which we talked about the shooting.
Yeah, and like I said, okay, you have maybe one bad game. Well, you get one more opportunity to impress whoever's there thinking about, I got one extra scholarship in my back pocket. Do I want to use it? I don't know. There's this kid that I've heard about, but he had a really bad game. Well, let me check him out in the second game just to see. Maybe he'll do better now with a little bit less pressure on him or maybe with more pressure on him. Let's see what happens. And so there's a lot of things that work in the favor, obviously, of having that third place game. But at the same time, it is kind of just a let me kind of hold your hand a little bit, and it's going to be okay type of game. But it is the state finals. So if there was ever going to be a time to have that, that would be the time.
Right. And, again, you've earned the right, and I think that, even though the trophies are all the same size.
Yes.
We talk about, bringing home
we should change that.
The big trophy, and it says something different. And at the end of the day, you have the third place game because you would prefer the third place trophy over the fourth place trophy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's in simplest terms. That is the deal. And again, I think third place at state is different than third place at the El Dorado Holiday Tournament.
Yes, absolutely.
I just, and again, we play these third place games. We play too many place games in my estimation, but that's a whole other topic. But I think it's a worthy cause and a reason to do it. But again, as you said, it needs to be treated with the respect. If you're going to do it, then
absolutely,
then don't,
Yeah. Otherwise, you can lop off an entire day. Very easily. And we can be there's no need to have those games at night. We're going to have it would be 8 games in one day, and then we're going to have 4 games the next day.
Right.
And it'll be, some of these kids are going to be tired, but that's okay.
Well, in the old days, you would, and that's why the format of the Benton Invitational was the way it was.
Yes,
you played on Friday, and then you played 2 on Saturday because that's the way it was at state.
Yeah. And that's what all these in-season tournaments were built to do, essentially.
Right.
Now, some of them, as we've gotten further and further into the history of IHSA, have just been made to just be had.
Right.
School looks and says, I want to do that. But a lot of the original tournaments, the ones that are, most of them are dead now, but a lot of these original tournaments were, you probably should get kind of a feel if you want to go. That's why the Carbon Day Holiday Tournament was so big, was because everyone was like, come on down. Let's see each other, and really iron sharpens iron type of thing, but also kind of get a feel for what the playoffs is going to be like, because this is what we're trying to model it after.
And if you had a good team and, that you thought might make the Super,
yes,
again, back to that shooting background, you would go to Carbondale, the holiday tournament, because, hey, our biggest game of the year to that point could be in this facility.
Absolutely.
I would like to have my kids accustomed to playing on a bigger floor with a different shooting background.
And I understand, a lot of people started looking at it. There's a lot of things that were closer, and there's also the side of, I don't want to maybe see that team because I don't want them to get our secrets.
Sure.
Less about not wanting to see them and more about them being seen. I get that side of it, but as I said, iron sharpens iron. It doesn't hurt to play that team, and then, oh, well, now we know what we need to do to improve against a team like that. Even if you win that game, you come out of it saying, well, this is the first time that this problem cropped up, so now we know that we need to work on that, and then you become a better team.
Yeah, and I'll gradually step off my soapbox and get us back to the state tournament. That happened back in early February when Goreville and Lawrenceville matched up in the Rich Heron Classic at Benton, and it would have been easy to go, no, we might see them down the road. You know, and again, that's assuming that, you know, each team was going to get there.
Yeah.
But it turned out to be the case. And I wondered how that would play in because, you know, Goreville won that first game 50-45, and then I thought, well, Lawrenceville will not be surprised by Goreville's defensive pressure. It's not going to be like seeing it for the first time and experience. They have lived it, and they have seen it. They lost to it, and so now I wondered how would that affect matchup number 2. I mean, and it turned out to not be the case, and again, that's a tribute to, you know, Goreville and Todd Tripp and their group and what they were able to accomplish.
Well, and in those instances, obviously Goreville going into that game at Benton, you know they've got a good defense, but yeah, Lawrenceville is sitting there saying, how much was it that we were shocked versus how good it was, and they found out yesterday, well, we were shocked in Benton, but obviously, it wasn't just because we were shocked. It was because they just played that good at defense. And so it's always interesting when you see a team a second time. And, you know, they talk about the third time being such a tough time. But if you've dominated the first 2 times, which in terms of defensively, that's what Goreville did, you feel pretty confident about a potential third matchup. Obviously, that's not going to happen this year. But point being, you know, that Goreville showed both times that this is who we are. And both times, Lawrenceville had no answer, even after that first meeting, because it was just, they just play suffocating defense, and there's no answer for it. They play good suffocating defense. A lot of teams play suffocating defense. They don't play good suffocating. Goreville plays good suffocating defense, and it's all been leading up to this moment.
And would be remiss not to mention that Lawrenceville had one of their rotation players,
that'll play a role.
Aiden Winningham, who was in a car wreck over the weekend, and you know had some pretty serious injuries. Saw some pictures that you know he had surgery in Indianapolis, and then he got released, and then was able to be at the game last night. Good. And so certainly that's a guy that they missed, and you know some of the things that you know they had to deal with, but you know they go out and impressively beat Leroy in the super sectional, and then they end up coming home with third. But again, great to see him there, and you know
that's what matters.
You know, and I saw some pictures posted of his car, and it was like, oh my goodness, you know that young man was incredibly fortunate, and you also realize that you know what happens is truly not in the grand scheme of things is not nearly as important as a lot of times we make it.
Yeah, there's in recent years we've seen a few too many of those type of situations in our area specifically, and it really takes you out of the whole competition of the sport because it's much more like that shouldn't happen. These are kids, and you feel for the communities that go through it. And so obviously feel for Lawrenceville and for him. But it's always great then when they have a semi-quick recovery where they're able to make it to a game in the next week. Maybe they don't play, but they show that, hey, I'm here, I've recovered, and to an extent at least at that point, and it's all going to be okay. That's kind of where everybody kind of breathes a sigh of relief.
And to not be able to at least experience the whole being on the arena or being on the floor. And I saw a picture that he went out and shot a one
good
left-handed layup on his own, just say he made a bucket. And so again, all the best to him in his recovery. And again, kudos to Lawrenceville on a tremendous season. They end up 35-3 in third place. A great season for them. Now we'll kind of guide it back to where we started. Goreville in the state championship game. They get Chicago Marshall, who just absolutely decimated Eastland in the other semifinal. And again, 10 o'clock Saturday morning. If you're watching it on TV locally, it'll be on Channel 49, and or it's streaming on the NFHS, which is a subscription. But I suspect that there won't be anybody in Goreville tomorrow.
No.
And I think I-57 will be maybe a little busier than usual with a bunch of the yellow and black heading north.
Yes, I would suspect as much. There was I think 2021, Murfreesboro went up to Breeze Central, and we were talking to some Breeze fans. That, as people know, those fans are very much like the Goreville fans. Yes. And Breeze Mater Dei was also playing out of town, but Breeze Central was in town, and they were talking about how, if Breeze Central wins here today and Breeze Mater Dei wins, then no one will be in town next week. So it'd be a perfect time for people to come on in and try to make a robbery happen.
Right.
Don't do that.
We're not advocating
Don't do that. But the sentiment remains.
Yeah, the last person out of Goreville needs to turn out the lights and again. So now you get to the state championship, and Chicago Marshall, a very athletic bunch.
Yeah.
This is I think their first time in quite a while for making state.
Yeah.
So you get the nerves out of playing there for both teams, and so now you come in, and it's a different type of nerves because now you're playing for a state championship.
Yeah.
And you've got to think that Goreville being able to play different styles and having to win in different ways, especially in the postseason. We mentioned that Trico sectional, and you go back to the pressure that Sparta is able to put defensively. Mm-hmm. That's very similar to what they're going to see tomorrow.
Yes.
And it shouldn't be a shock to the system because they have seen some things.
No. Well, the one thing that, if I recall correctly, and you and I don't put a bunch of stocks into analytics, but our friend Nesto Hoops does a great job with that, and I believe that he did not have Marshall anywhere near the state finals in terms of even like his rankings. I think they were out of his like top 25 or something. But that goes to show just how on fire this Marshall team is right now.
Rankings mean nothing.
Exactly, they mean nothing.
No offense.
Exactly. But it comes from the analytics more than anything, the power index that he has.
Right.
And he wasn't saying that they couldn't by any means, obviously. But again, goes to show just how on fire they've been. And so this is kind of the perfect storm, what you would kind of want to see, where it's the powerhouse Goreville that's been playing well all season long, taking all comers, versus against Marshall, who plays very well and is as hot as they could possibly be right now. It's going to be a good matchup, and I'm interested to see how it turns out. Obviously, from Southern Illinois, we know who we're on the side of.
Right.
But when it comes down to it, as sportscasters, storytellers, we just want a really good game.
Right, and again, I mean, that's one of those things where you're taught early on in the journalism profession you're not supposed to root, and there's no cheering in the press box, that type of thing.
I've been to a few that there's cheering. Unfortunately,
yeah, that's another topic probably for another day. But I mean, look, it would be silly for me to say that I don't care who wins.
Sure.
I mean, the human nature element. When you get to know these guys and you interview these kids, and again, I think that sometimes too much pressure and stuff gets put on it, and too much, we overanalyze everything. But at the end of the day, I mean, they are the Southern Illinois representatives.
Absolutely.
And they're East St. Louis. They're playing. Actually, I think they're playing now in the 3A, so they could potentially still be alive. You had the 2 6-1-8 teams meeting in the semifinals. And look, if Goreville hadn't won yesterday, I would prefer to see Lawrenceville win.
Sure.
And so, but it's Goreville there, and the story, and the one thing that I have, I've done this quite a while, and the one trait of teams that end up going to state or winning a state championship is not only are they talented, but they're good kids.
Yeah.
And my
they're
goodness,
great.
And that is certainly been on display here with Goreville. I mean, it's been such a pleasure to talk to these guys, after the games and such. And I know it's always easier when you win.
Of course.
But again, I talked about this on our Friday Night Live on Facebook, that Goreville-Waltonville game, two teams that were just competing their guts out, but you could see the level of respect between the two teams. There was, if somebody got knocked down, they helped them. And it didn't matter what jersey was on, and there was none of this yapping and, talking stuff and all that jazz. It was two teams competing their guts out and doing it in a respectful, classy manner. And man, tip of the cap for that.
Absolutely. That's what you want to see. That's what the game's about. And you don't always see that. You can hear about the most respectful community ever, and then you go to a basketball game and they've got one of the most disrespectful teams you've ever seen.
Right.
So it's a testament to obviously those kids' parents, and it's a testament to Todd Tripp and the program that he's put together. But man, it's not always easy to be that way, and especially when you're competing for something like that, and you know that on both sides, people that aren't on the court are saying things, and they're trying to get in your ear to really try to fire you up more and be like, well, this person said this. Right. But who knows if that was actually said? But it's a testament to just the growth that these kids have had, the people that they've had around them, and just how good of people that those people are.
And, again, this isn't just some old guy here that, hey, I mean, we've all seen the video of Larry Bird being one of the biggest trash talkers ever.
I just saw a video. I didn't watch the whole thing, but someone was like, Larry, you're a pretty big trash talker, right? And he was like, well, I didn't think so. Like,
but then you hear everybody else tell the stories. And so trash talk is not anything new. But it just seems like we've gotten to the point where that becomes maybe a bigger focus than it needs to be. And, and before I go too far off the rails, as I've gotten back up on my soapbox, it just, how many times do you see somebody make a great move off a dribble and, the defender slips or whatever, and everybody's like, ooh, and then the percentages of the times that actually leads to a bucket are slim.
At high school, almost never.
I mean, you get all that, and then, if they don't make the shot, then, okay, great. You get a dribble, and he slipped. Okay. And even because he slipped, it's not like, but it's just that, today's society, everybody wants to be like, ooh, gotcha.
Yeah.
And
most of the time, it's moisture on the floor. It's not even that the ankles were broken necessarily.
Right. And so, anyway, before I get too far down that road, 10 o'clock tomorrow, which would be Saturday, and it'll be Goreville and Chicago Marshall for the 1A state championship. And we'll have all the highlights for you. We'll even do a special Saturday edition, a championship edition of Friday Night Live. That'll be Saturday night over on our Facebook page. So be looking for that. And of course, as always, we'll have highlights and reaction posted on the website, riverradiosportscentral.com, and shared to all our social media. Personally, though, the 10 o'clock stuff, on the semifinal Saturday, why do you always put the Southern team at 10 a.m.? And I know it's not always, but it just feels that way.
It does.
And, as the guy that's traveling 3 hours, that's no bueno. But
just start going now.
Yeah, I mean, you get a good night's sleep, and again, there's nothing like, covering a championship game. That's one of the coolest things that I get to do, and and especially if you're fortunate enough to cover a winner, and just the elation and that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, I got to cover one my first year. First season, because football, basketball, that's 2 seasons rather. First season, and I appreciated it, but I didn't get to really appreciate it until years down the line, where it was like, I wish I would have done this or set this up, and I mean, you're down on the court or the field where they're putting us in specific places and they're trying to coordinate with us. So there's only so much that I could have done, but at the same time, I go back and I'm like, even though it wasn't a winner, there's so many things that I wish I could have done differently that, I'm kind of like, I hope someday in my future, whether it's with Murfreesboro or some other school, I hope that I get to do it again, because I think there's going to be some things that'll change.
So you think about that the way we look at it.
Yeah.
Imagine being the Goreville Blackcats tonight, trying to get some sleep. because tomorrow morning you're playing for a state championship.
In my 30s, I feel like I can do that. I can figure it out because I know how the mind works now.
Right.
15, 16, 17, no way. I'm not sleeping a wink.
Right. So, should be a fun time. Again, look for River Radio Sports Central's coverage, and it will be shared to all of our social media. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the River Radio Sports Central podcast. For Matty V, I'm Darren Kinnard. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon.